Welcome back to the Geterbrewed channel. So today we're going to brew a beer. Step one of a brew day has to be preparation. So for preparation for today, I have the water in the main all-in-one system and I have it heating up to my strike temperature. I then also have the ingredients. I've got all my equipment laid out. I've got my spray bottle with some no-rinse sanitizer. I've got a jug, mash paddle. I've got my all-rounder fermenter. Just have everything sterile and ready to go. And then plan your recipe out and write some notes, even if it's just a scrap of paper like I have here. So the particular recipe I'm going for, 4.2% light lager, using 2.7 kilograms of Clear Choice Extra Pale. It's polyphenol free Clear Choice malt, which helps produce a brighter, clearer beer, and I like using it in lagers. It's a great malt. Flake maize, we're using 500 grams of that and 500 grams of flaked rice. So 4 main ingredients in the grist, and then the rice hulls we're going to use to help create a better grain bed. So in relation to the hops, you can see the hops at the front. We're using 2 hop additions. Hallertau Tradition, so a traditional German noble hop for a traditional light lager recipe. We're going to use the Diamond Lager strain of yeast from Lallemand. Big fans of Lallemand, as you know that. And then we've got a little bit of Yeast Life Extra. Yeast Life Extra is just to give the yeast some nutrition, so it's a healthy and active fermentation. The other item you'll see here is a Protafloc tablet. It's a carrageen seaweed-based kettle fining. So you add that 10 minutes before the end of the boil, and that means then that you can get your protein break before you continue on to the fermenter. So it's a kettle fining. So we're just going to put our grain basket into the main vessel. You can see these little nodules here, and then there's the arm on the inside. Just make sure that you're coming just inside that part. So that drops down in nicely. And then just take the ingredients and just gently pour them in. So if you want to create a recipe at home and you've got the ingredients list, we have a custom grain kit recipe builder that allows you to build that using any ingredient that we supply in any quantity. So it's an economical way of doing it. It also means all the ingredients are in the one bag, so you get everything delivered, weighed out perfectly and accurately for you. And then that includes the malt as much as it does the hops and the yeast as well. So in this particular recipe, I've asked the guys to prepare me a kilogram of rice hulls because it's a lager and we're using maize and rice. So we're going to add some rice hulls to give the grain bed just a really good quality extract and runoff. So these will need a good mix in. They add no, like rice hulls will add no flavour or quality to the beer. All they do is assist with runoff and extract. So just using a plastic mash paddle. You can get these in plastic or wood or stainless steel, whatever your choice is. You can see now that those rice hulls are really mixing in well there. If you're confused about water volumes and mashing in volumes, we have a video on how to calculate your mash and sparge volumes. Don't get too caught up on it. If as long as your pre-boil volume is on target, it doesn't matter what way you do it, whether you make an extra wet mash or whether you do it precisely and sparge to the exact amount of litres. As long as you hit that pre-boil volume and your gravities are right, then you're winning. So you'll hear me talking all the time about cleanliness being king and about your temperatures being very accurate. So we can see here that we're wanting to mash at 67 degrees. We've mashed in 4 minutes ago. You can see the temperature's at 67.1. That's precision. That's exactly what you want. That means that you're going to get good enzymatic activity and you're going to extract all the sugars that you want. Say you're brewing on a 3-vessel system that you've made yourself out of like cooler boxes and things like that there. There's an element of knowledge and craft with adjusting the strike water with the temperature of the grains to try and get your mash temperature accurately. And then if temperature fluctuates during the mash, you don't really have a way of adjusting it, whereas the all-in-one systems, it's doing that for you automatically, and it's clicking the heater on and off as and when required. So it means that you've got a nice precise mash temperature for the full 60 minutes. We have added our grist, or grains, whatever terminology you want to use, to the strike water. That then means that we're now mashing. So we have it at 67 degrees and we're going to mash for 60 minutes. And during that mash, what we're doing is we're taking the starch that's in the crushed grain, turning it into fermentable sugars, getting all that enzyme activity underway that we need for a successful fermentation. So mashing can be 60 minutes, it can be 90 minutes. We're recirculating in the all-in-one system here. So we've popped a little tube into the cam lock fitting which goes through the lid. We've popped the pump on just by flicking the switch, and it's taken the wort from the base in below the mash basket and pumping it up the sight glass and onto the top of the grain bed. That recirculating actually makes things really efficient. At this stage, the mash is on. We'll allow that to finish the mash before we move on to the next stage. Step 3 is sparging. If you're not sure what the term sparging means, it's very simply you're rinsing the grains with extra water. So you're wanting to lift out your mash basket. There's little nodules on the side of the basket, which I'll show you in 1 second. As you lift them out, you rest them on the bar inside the all-in-one system, and then we use warm water, which we have preheated. So if you have a sparge water heater at home, it means that you just set it to the temperature that you need. We have multiple options of those, from digi boilers to the grain filler sparge heater, whatever your choice is. Or if you're not wanting to invest in a sparge heater, simply use your kettle at home and something like a large plastic jug, and have yourself a spirit thermometer so that you can check what temperature the water's at. If you're wanting to do the recipe I'm doing, we're going to heat that to 65 degrees. We're then going to sparge from the top, rinsing the grains. So the water, the sparge water we're adding is rinsing down through the grain bed, ensuring that we get all those residual sugars that are within the mash basket down into the wort in the base of the kettle. The reason you're pouring in that liquid is to hit a pre-boil target volume. So if you're wanting to put 23 litres into your fermenter, and you know that, like, everyone's system's going to be different, but for me, I know that the sweet spot for this system is going to be just over 28 litres. So I want to sparge until I've got just over 28 litres. So if we're wanting to sparge to a pre-boil volume in the region of somewhere in and around here, so that I'm putting 23 litres into the fermenter at the end of the boil, because there's going to be evaporation during the boil. Obviously, we're going to have the lid off, and it's going to be a rolling boil, and there'll be steam coming off the top of the vessel. The reason that the sight glass is full at the moment is that we're recirculating the wort, using the pump to draw from the bottom of the grain basket and pumping it in through the top here. If you want to have a look, you can see 60-minute mash is finished. You can see we've got a lovely colour in the sight glass here. At the moment, what we're going to do is just knock the pump off. Pump's off, close off the valve. We'll remove this little cam lock fitting. So cam lock fitting removed, lid off, grain basket handle. So it goes into the two knobs on either, or two holes on either side of the grain basket. Now, if you can see this, there's a little bar runs in here and here. So as you lift this up, you want this little nodule to catch on to this little bar. There's one at each, at the 4 stages. You can hear at this stage that the liquid is draining out of the grain basket. So what we want to do is allow that a short while to do that. You're just going to take it up to the next one up. So let that come up and then pop it on there. And then we can see that we've got the filter bed on the top. For the sparging, in this case, we've heated up some water, poured it into a 5-litre jug, and we're just going to gently pour that over the top of the grain bed. The reason you have the stainless steel plate on the top of the mash bed in the all-in-one vessel is to ensure that when you're pouring the water on that it diffuses it equally across the top of the grain bed. So when I took out the cam lock fitting, the tap was closed, so it was holding the liquid volume up here. As soon as you open that, it drops it down to the volume that's inside the kettle. So we can see at the minute we're at 22, so we've got a wee bit to go, so we're going to get some more sparge water. I've hit manual, moved the temperature, changed the temperature to 100 degrees, hit start, it's kicked in that it's boiling. It's got a 60-minute boil time on, so once it hits 100 degrees, the 60 minutes will start counting down. We have added 2 5-litre jugs of water that we've preheated as our sparge water. You can still hear that the liquid's draining down out of the grain basket there. We're sitting at 26 litres. I think we're going to need another few litres of water to hit our pre-boil volume. So I covered this before, but the pre-boil volume is the volume of liquid that you want in the container, which allows for an evaporation rate, which means that you're then getting the correct amount of liquid into your fermenter. So we're wanting to put 23 litres into our fermenter, so actually reckon we're going to need 28.5, maybe 29 litres. We're in no rush because it's at 66 degrees at the moment and we want to take that right up to a boil temperature. We've comfortably hit our 29 litres of target pre-boil volume. I can hear that there's no more liquid dripping out of the mash basket. So there's 2 ways you can do this. Handle on the top. This isn't warm at this stage, but be careful, it could become warm. Handy little tip, get yourself a plastic fermenter, a bucket, or one of those little buckets with the soft handles that go in and out, whatever, just to make things easier for transferring. So we're just going to lift this straight out and pop it into the bucket. So temperature's starting to rise quite nicely here. So what I'm going to do is pop the lid on to help get that temperature up. Now, you don't want to leave the lid on during the boil. The reason you don't want to leave the lid on during the boil is you want the DMS to evaporate off. If you don't do that, DMS can leave like a corn flavour in your beer. So we're only putting the lid on to allow the temperature to rise that little bit quicker. Okay, so you can check out here, you can see we've literally hit 100 degrees. Don't run the pump whenever it's boiling, and you can see because we've hit the temperature, it's kicked on 60-minute boil. So I'm going to remove the lid for the duration of the boil. Just be careful, obviously now that it's at boiling temperatures, you don't want to get yourself burnt. 60-minute hop addition, the guys have labelled this up for me with a tradition, 14 grams at 60 minutes. So this is a lager style beer, low IBUs. IBUs mean international bittering units. It's the descriptor that we use to describe the bitterness level of the beer we're creating. So there's not going to be a lot of hop additions in a light lager. So we've got 1 at 60 minutes to add a little bit of bitterness, and then 1 at 5 minutes out from the end of the boil. So we're 10 minutes before the end of the boil, counting down, and at this stage I'm going to add the Protafloc tablet, Whirlfloc tablet, whatever it is, and the chiller. So if we add the chiller, that means that it gets an opportunity to sterilise the actual chiller in the last few minutes of the boil, and add our Protafloc tablet as well. And we add the yeast nutrient and then allow it 5 minutes before we add the last hop addition, which is 5 minutes out. So, look, we're using Lallemand premium yeast, diamond yeast for this particular brew. It's not necessarily 100% necessary to have yeast life extra or Cerevomyces, whatever you choose to add as a yeast nutrient. It just makes for a better fermentation, and we don't see any reason why you wouldn't use it, but if you don't want to use it, again, it's not a big issue. Right, so at this stage we've got the chiller's been submerged for a few minutes, so we're just going to connect, if I can speak properly, the hose connection. So this one is warm water out, this one is cold water in, and then we're going to add the last 5 minute hop addition. So this particular one, it's 34 grams of Hallertau Tradition. I'm just going to sprinkle that in. So boil's almost over, and in 5 minutes we'll switch the chiller on and start cooling the wort. Lots of different options for cooling. You can have a counterflow chiller, immersion chiller, whether that be copper or stainless steel. We personally believe that the copper ones are better. They've got antibacterial properties and they cool more efficiently than a stainless steel chiller does, because copper conducts heat better. So for us, there's a few things you want to take into consideration. The time of year for which you're brewing. So if it's during a heat wave, the tap water that you're using to go through your hose pipe obviously is going to be much higher. You have to allow extra time. It's important to try and get that temperature down quickly, but some people like to, transfer the wort into a bucket, put it in an ice bath and stir it until it goes down. There's endless opportunities, but you can see we're 14 minutes into cooling here. We're down to 34.8. Copper immersion chiller's working really efficiently here, and great piece of kit. And we make them bespokely here at Geterbrewed for the all-in-one brewing system. So if you want one for your system, you want it adjusted, just ask us and we can do that in-house. I'm going to cool this to a slightly higher temperature than would be normal for a lager, so doing something a bit unique today. It's always good to experiment with homebrewing. So we're going to ferment this at 22 degrees under pressure. Under pressure fermentation with lager strains allows you to push the boundaries a little bit, so the pressure suppresses the esters, which stops off flavours, and we should get a really good, clean and crisp lager in record speeds, as opposed to waiting the long lagering time. So 22 degrees fermented, we'll start it off at 15 bar pressure. Once we get it into the all rounder, we'll pop the all rounder into our Ferminator, and it'll precisely manage the temperature for us throughout fermentation. I've taken just the tap off there and added a little bit of silicone hosing and putting a little bit of spray sanitizer through it there to make sure that it's sterile. Again, the outside, the hosing. We can see we've hit 22.4 degrees. Well, it's just dropped to 22.3 as I say that. So I've stopped the water flow and we're going to begin the transfer into the all-rounder FermZilla. About 1042, 24 litres into the fermenter, so a little bit more than what we'd thought, which is a good thing. Cut open the yeast and then fermentation can start. You can see while we've been prepping this and doing the transfer, we've brought over a Ferminator. Ferminator allows you to precisely control your fermentation temperature. Fermentation temperature is critically important in homebrewing, so if you have a good, stable, precise temperature, you'll get better results. Now we're doing something a little bit experimental with this brew because we're going to ferment this lager yeast at 22 degrees. Normally, if I was using this yeast, I would ferment it somewhere between 10 and 14 degrees in long and slow fermentation, whereas this time around we're going to pitch it at 22 degrees, put it into the Ferminator, add a 2-bar pressure release valve and ferment it at 15 psi. So that should allow us to fast track the fermentation, fast track the conditioning and do a true fast lager, all being well. Okay, so Ferminator is, I suppose it's effectively it's a fermentation chamber. So it's a polystyrene blow mold. It's a very well made polystyrene blow mold, and it has a Peltier element and fan in it, which allows it to heat and cool as required. And then this little thermometer probe tells it obviously the temperature that it is inside. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop the FermZilla in there and then close everything out, and that'll allow fermentation to take place at a precise and accurate temperature. We've actually ended up with quite a few litres higher than what we thought. If this sticker has been put on in the right place and it's accurate. With fermentation stickers or fermenter stickers, you need to check them, obviously. So this is showing that we've got 26 litres into the fermenter. I kind of wanted 23. Our gravity reading, we were aiming for 1042, and we've ended up with 1040. So probably the little bit of extra liquid means that we've ended up with a slightly less target gravity. So I'm still happy that it's the first time we've brewed this particular recipe using this particular kit. So it's like everything, you need to learn. You need to do a few brews with the kit to learn what your evaporation losses are and to learn what your absorption rates are so that you can produce consistent and accurate volumes into your fermenter. But I'm content with what we've achieved here today. So we have a little bit of extra liquid, which is a bonus. What we're going to do is allow the fermentation to take place at 22. Pressure will build up in the fermenter and will be spun out here at 15 psi. So it could take until tomorrow before we see active fermentation and pressure starting to lift. But I'm going to close this up now and allow fermentation to take place. You can see there during transfer we ended up with some issues with the tap, and if we just look inside now that we've got it empty, you can see that the bazooka filter has got a lot of trub on it there, which is blocked. Probably has happened because we added the hops without a hop bag, or without a hop tea bag. We added the pellets straight. So a few things that you could do to avoid that is you could add a hop spider, use the hop tea bags that we supply for putting your hops in, or crisp all grain ingredient kits come with the hop tea bags. Not a massive issue, we were able to work around it really quickly, but just something to be aware of if it happens to you at home. It's not something to panic about. It's as you can see, it's just simply that the mesh in the bazooka filter has got clogged up with trub. What we're going to do now is just clean down and get ready for the next one. So that's brewing a fast lager, and just so you understand, fermentation for a lager is normally quite a long process. So active primary fermentation would take roughly a week, and then you want to allow it to lager for at least 6 weeks, maybe longer. With the process that we've done today, using the FermZilla and the spunding valve, it allows us to fast track that. So we're going to ferment that under pressure at 15 psi in this particular case. Fermentation should only take a few days, and then it should clear up in a really quick period of time rather than having a long protracted lagering time. The reason we're doing this is just to experiment to see if we can make lagers fast. It's also to show you guys how to do a brew day step by step. There's going to be things go wrong in a brew day. It's how you work around them, and don't get stressed, don't get worked up. Just simply see the issue that's in front of you and find a way around it. If you have a problem and you're stuck and you're in the middle of a brew day and you can't find a quick Google search on how to fix it, pop us a message on social media or pick up the phone and ring the free phone number. We're more than happy to help here at Geterbrewed. Right guys, look, we're back to obviously packaging stage, fermentation's complete. We've crash cooled the All Rounder. We've rigged up one of the Kegland beer guns. So basically the way this works is liquid goes in here and gas goes in here. And if you listen, we've got the gas rigged up. So what the reason for the gas is you put this in and you purge in the bottle. So you put it in, purges the bottle before you start to fill. So what we're going to do is pop the ball lock onto the All Rounder. Now, point of note, the dip tube and the float is on the liquid outpost, which is this one. So we're just going to pop that on there.
Oh, hang on.
So sometimes takes a bit of brute force and ignorance. Right, okay, so we've got our beer gun, gas, liquid. This is attached to the carbonation cap, which has a dip tube and a float running into it. So we're going to take our bottle, okay, boom, gas, liquid. Is that working? Right, do that again. Right, they talk about capping on foam. I'm quite surprised at how well that worked out for the first time ever trying that. Look, so popping our cap on, we fill the bottle, get 2 thumbs straight on the handles and just a little bit of pressure, and that'll mean that you get a really good seal in that. So that is lager fermented under pressure. Now I think we should try it. It's always good on a brew day to have a beer when you're packaging, have a beer when you're brewing. So the rationale behind using one of the all-rounders and fermenting under pressure is to speed things up. So not only does it speed up the fermentation, reducing the esters, allowing you to turn the beer around quicker, but it also means that you can carbonate the beer naturally, and then you can package using a beer gun, and the beer's ready to drink right away. Now, I've done a lot of homebrewing, like I've been a homebrewer for decades now, and it's not very often I get the chance now to test out new equipment and do a brew. And in this particular video, I think you'll have noticed there's been a few mistakes. There's been 2 attempts before we got the 4 attempts to get the bottle to fill correctly. That's part of the fun of this, and you learn from your mistakes and you make better beer. And look, if you look at this, like, it's crystal clear lager. There's no sediment in the bottle. And I think we should crack one open and see what it tastes like. So,
anybody got a bottle?
Anybody got a bottle opener? Yeah. Yeah. So, if this pours well, Dylan's going to say it's legit. If you watch his videos, he likes that word a lot. So, it smells clean.
Tastes like a beer.
So it tastes like a lager, smells like a lager, it looks like a lager. Needs a little bit more carbonation. So what we're going to do is add a little bit of top pressure, keep the Ferminator on, keep it on chill, and then that means that once it gets below that 4 degrees and picks up the extra bit of CO2 that you've put in, the beer will carbonate, and then it'll be ready to package perfectly next time. As I said, love to share our mistakes with you here at Geterbrewed so you make better beer at home. I hope you enjoyed that video today. Thanks so much for watching. We'd really appreciate it if you'd give us a subscribe and hit the little bell also. Then it means when we release new videos, you guys get to see them first at home. Thanks so much. Happy brewing.